What's happening, Hardscapers? This is episode 279 of the How to Hardscape podcast, where we talk about how you can start and grow your hardscaping business. And on today's episode, we have a part one of a year in review, where we're going to just take some sound bites from various guests that we've had on the show. This year, we particularly focus on the topic of employees, from everything from hiring, retaining, bonus structures. And I just wanted to take a bunch of sound bites from this year in regards to employees from non-hardscape business owners and just put them all into one episode. So we do have the I Am a Hardscaper episodes where we bring on business owners, hardscape business owners, and do a deep dive into their business. But then we have all of these other interviews that we do with amazing guests. On this episode, you're going to hear from Jason Taylor of Predictive Success, Marty Grunder, Tony Bass, George from Knowledge Tree Consulting, and Jim Huston. Some really amazing guests that we've had on the show, and recurring guests, some of them that we've had on the show, and specifically taking sound bites from their interviews in regards to employees, hiring, retaining, bonus structures, and so much more here. So before we get into today's episode, we don't want to say thank you to our sponsors, Cycle CPA. And if you're looking for bookkeeping, accounting, CFO services, reach out to Cycle CPA at cyclecpa.com. Let them know How to Hardscape sent you for money off their services there. Knowledge Tree Consulting. If you are looking for somebody to help you in your business, I would highly recommend Knowledge Tree Consulting. They are efficiency consultants in our industry, and you've heard them on the podcast multiple times before. George and Peter of Oriole Landscaping, and George a couple of other times talking about various topics, and we'll definitely have George on in the future to talk more. But you can learn more about them at knowledgetreeconsulting.com. And employees was such a big topic this year because with the How to Hardscape headquarters software, where you can budget, estimate job costs, time track, schedule, and so much more with your business, our How to Hardscape headquarters software, I am trying to find a way to really build a software that'll help provide a career path forward in your business for employees coming into your business. So what we've already done and what we're wanting to build upon is a course content area where you can assign your employees these courses and give them agency in their trajectory in your business. So for example, we already have installation courses on there, and you can assign them to your employees and see how well they do, and tell them that, hey, I'm assigning you this. You're starting out as a laborer right now, but finish these courses and show us in the field what you've learned, and we can level you up to going from a laborer to an installer, or whatever that next step in your business is. And that's the whole entire point to this course content area, and what we're going to continue to build upon, so that you can take an installer and bring them into, or a lead hand and bring them into a foreman, somebody else into a sales role, somebody else into a more of a leadership role, and so on and so forth there. So employees was a really big topic this year, and that's part of the reason why, not only just to help me in my own business as well, and to hopefully help you in your business pursuits here. So without further ado, let's get into today's episode. This is Jason Taylor of Predictive Success. It's a behavioral assessment tool, and you can use it to help with company culture, amongst many other things. It's really incredible. This 2-question survey, what it will give you in knowing you more about yourself, but also the employees and other people in your business. Is this going to help us kind of see who's going to work well together, especially on a small crew, to be able to identify those possible future conflicts that may occur?
Yeah, absolutely. So in the platform, we have two things that would address that. So we have one thing called the relationship guide. So I can actually plug you in and me in. If you're my new boss and you just hired me, you can actually plug us both in, and immediately, literally within 10 seconds, I'll get a report that says, here's Michael and Jason's strong points to the relationship. Here's the strength of the relationship. Here's the caution areas to the relationship based on who they are. And here's some recommendations on how to make sure that the relationship thrives. Okay. I love that report because it makes us more self-aware. And when we're more self-aware, we actually get onto bigger and better things, as opposed to to just arguing about the little minutia stuff that we don't need to, right? If I know who you are ahead of time and you know who I am, we kind of deal with that, right? Communication's everything, right? It's when we actually run to the problem or address it right away, you'd be amazed on what actually happens. So that's one thing that we have to make sure that we're getting along. The other thing we have is a part of the system which is most popular. It's called team dynamics, and we design teams. And I can actually take who's ever on your team, as long as they've done an assessment, I can put them into a pie. And the pie has 4 quadrants. Okay, so teamwork and employee experience, innovation and agility, results and discipline, and process and precision. And where you sit in the pie shows me how you behave and what strengths you bring to the team. When I put you as a team into that pie, I see where does everybody place in the pie and how are they going to work together as a team now, right? So now that's a competitive advantage over my competitors, over the industry. So now I can actually say, hey, based on this team that I put together, here's the strengths. Here's what they're going to do, amazingly at. Here's what we need to double down on. They're going to be fantastic at that. Okay. But what's also important is I see your blind spots. So, what are the blind spots of this team, and how do I address that ahead of time so I really don't have to worry about it? And to my point earlier in the podcast, lose sleep at night over it, thinking, why is this happening, right? And then what the team dynamics also does is it gives you recommendations for the team. It says, hey, based on your strengths and your blind spots, here's top 3 recommendations based in science on what you can do to actually make this team thrive, right? And I do that a lot in your world. I'll get a company, and I'm dealing with one client right now where you get a company and they'll say, hey, here's our crews that we have currently working together. Can we improve this? And I'll actually say to them, can I guess which crew takes the longest time to get something done and probably frustrates you a little more than the others? And the gentleman that I work with said, yeah, take a guess. And I said, it's crew 2. It's this one right here. And his face just dropped. And he was like, how do you know that? And I said, because I know their profile. So I know that this crew right now is more collaborative. They're more of, let's work together, let's seek harmony. They don't have somebody on that crew that makes a decision, right? So when you don't have somebody that makes a decision, you go to the owner all the time. And you say, okay, hey, we want to do this. And the owner's frustrated thinking, yeah, of course you do that. We do that every day. Just do it, right? So I knew kind of right away what crew is causing this gentleman frustration and whatnot. So what did we do? We actually mixed the crews up. We actually made the crews a little, we fine-tuned them, right? And all of a sudden, instead of one crew dominating and, their jobs get done, they get, 4 jobs done in a day, and the other ones are doing 1, they're still doing 4 jobs, but the others are doing 2 and 3, and we're becoming more productive as a team, and we're actually getting to our result a little quicker.
You did mention the 4 pieces of the pie. I got teamwork, processes. I forget the other 2. What do those each of the pieces of the pie explain? What are they?
Yeah. So if I have an employee in teamwork and employee experience, they're all about culture. They're all about the greater good of the company, warm, fuzzy feeling. Let's strive to the results together. They seek harmony. They brainstorm out loud. They resolve conflict by focusing on the people involved in the company. If I get to somebody who's in innovation and agility, what do they bring? They're risk takers. They try new things. They experiment. They want to look under the rock. They want to look behind the tree. They want to say, hey, is there a different revenue stream that we can do? Is there something we can do differently that'll make us a little more efficient, right? They also resolve conflict by focusing on the people involved on their team. If I have somebody in the results and discipline section, they're all about results, goal achievement. Okay, they're concise in their communication. Okay, they're the people that when you send them a text and you'll send them a wordy text, they reply yes, no. And you think, is this person mad at me? They're not mad at you. It's just that's who they are, right? They're just short, to the point, right? They are more about is what we're doing actually making us money, right? And let's make sure that it is. And then if you have somebody in the process and precision, they're about being organized, being efficient. I like to call them, they're the glue of the organization. They're the ones who, when somebody in innovation and agility says, we should do this, this is crazy, let's do it, we can get it done next week. The people in process and precision are saying next week, maybe next month. There's a lot of steps to doing that. And let's actually put some structure and process behind it, right? The one thing I like about the results and discipline and process and precision people, okay, they look at when they're on a team, they think about where are we going and who will get me there. The people in teamwork and employee experience and innovation agility say, who's on my team and where are we going? So two totally different strategies, but both correct strategies. And isn't it nice to have balance sometimes in a company? And when you put a crew together, say, hey, we're going to look at things differently. But when we look at things differently, that's amazing because we make better decisions, right? When we have different personalities and behaviors in a company, and not everybody's thinking the exact same way, now we make decisions better, right? And we make different decisions. The way I think about something is probably different than the way you think about something. You're not right or wrong. I'm not right or wrong, but we'll get there together. And when we get there together, we actually create, better work, better world for ourselves.
We want to take a break from today's episode to thank our sponsor, Cycle CPA. Are you basing your business decisions solely on a gut feeling? If so, you may be leaving potential profits on the table. It's crucial to base these important decisions on your financials, whether you're planning to hire a new employee, add another crew, purchase equipment or vehicles, or take on more debt to support a new service line. At Cycle CPA, they not only handle bookkeeping and taxes, but they also provide guidance and advisory services tailored to the landscape and hardscape industry. Their team of specialized accountants ensures that when it comes to making the next key decision in your company, you'll have a financial partner in your corner. So visit them at cyclecpa.com, and for $200 off, mention the How to Hardscape podcast. Now back to our episode. Does this play into, I remember in your talk, you had a chart with 4 quadrants, talking about the culture champion in your business and so on and so forth there. Can you walk us through what that was? And does this tie into kind of what we were just talking about there with the 4 different pieces of the pie?
Yeah, it's a little different than the pie, but
okay.
What I do, but it's a great question. So every company that's out there, and I'm saying in every company, okay, has people that will fall into one of 4 quadrants. Okay, you'll either fall into the top quadrant, which is what I call cultural champion. That's where we want everybody to be. They're highly engaged and they have high performance. Okay, like tick, love them. Okay, then we have the quadrant that I call the grinders. Okay, the grinders are low engagement, high performance. We put up with them a little bit because you know what, they're not drinking the company Kool-Aid and saying everything's great all the time, but the performance is there, and they make sure that they make sure the job gets done and on time, and they're important to our company. Okay, we then have the quadrant I call the contaminators. Okay, low engagement, low performance. Okay, we need to get rid of them fast. Okay, because think of a contaminator, think of cancer. When we have a cancer on our team, we cut it out, right? If we have cancer in our body, we cut it out. We don't want it to affect the rest of the body. So when we have a contaminator on our team, think of that as we don't want that to spread in our company, right? So we actually say, okay, let's get, Sally, Johnny, Susie, or Jimmy out. They're out, right? And it's an easy out, right? Because they're not performing and they're not engaged. Then we have a quadrant I call the silent killers. Okay, and the silent killers we keep around forever because they're highly engaged, but there's low performance. But we keep them around, Michael, because they love everything we say. They love everything about the company. If I said, you know what, we should, spend $5 million on this, they'll say, yeah, that's a great idea. And when people are like that with you, lots of times think, oh, they're not causing me any headaches right now. They're agreeing with what I do. But then if you look at their performance, you're saying, well, wait a second, the performance isn't there, right? So silent killers, we need to get out of our company as well if we can't get them to the performance level. I don't believe in not coaching. I believe we coach people to performance, but you have to be aware of how much time you're coaching, which actually segues to another discussion about coaching, right? So, if always remember, like attracts like, right? So if I'm an A player, most likely I hang around and make sure I'm being around A players. Okay. Same with B players, C players, D players. What a lot of coaches do and companies do is they'll coach the D player and try to make him or her an A player, right? And that takes a lot of effort, right? So there's two things that happen there. It takes a lot of energy, it takes a lot of effort, okay? And what do you think and I'm going to ask you this, what do you think the watch out for that is? If I'm coaching my D player all the time, what's the watch out?
The coaching, oh, is that you're not focusing on the other players in your business?
Yeah, you're right, Michaels, right? So one, it takes a lot of energy, but two, the A player is saying, like, what are we spending all our time with that gentleman over there for? Here I am. I'm highly engaged. I'm performing, right? I'm doing what I said I do. I'm going above and beyond, and you're spending all your time with him, right? A players want to be coached too, right? So when I go into a company, I look at the four quadrants and I actually have hard discussions with them. And I say, hey, I want you to take your employees right now, and I want you to really, I literally draw four squares on a page and list your employees. Who's the cultural champion? Who do we have to coach a little more? Who do we need to actually? Because if I coach you just a little more, those cultural champions, the results are phenomenal because they get it and they go hard at it. I can get the grinder to be a little more engaged, right? I can work on the silent killer a bit on performance, but I would put them third in the list of coaching. And the contaminator, I'm not interested in coaching actually. Yeah, I'll do the basics, but if it doesn't stick, I know one thing: there's only a certain amount of hours in a day, and I'm not going to affect the rest of my organization if somebody can't get on board quickly.
Also, roles and responsibilities. Is the index going to help us identify people that are in the wrong role, that are ready to move on to another role? Is that going to help us also identify those?
Yeah, absolutely. So I want you to think of it this way. So just as people have behaviors, so do roles. Roles have behaviors as well. And what we do when we go into a company is we say, okay, we're going to actually identify the role. So the great thing about this is, just as you did our survey, and it took you what, 5 minutes, 6 minutes to do our survey, right?
Yeah.
A role assessment takes roughly 10 minutes. Okay. Whatever that role is, I send you a link. So it could be maybe it's a foreman on your team. Okay. I send you a link. It says foreman. You open up that link. You check off the statements that are relevant to that role, and only the ones that are relevant to that role. And in 10 minutes, I have a scientifically validated behavioral framework of what you're looking for in that role. Now that's the magic, because now I know the behaviors of the role. I know the behaviors of the person. I actually overlay the behaviors of the person on top of the role. And science shows me the fits and the gaps of that person to that role. And if they will do the job, not can do the job. Oh, that's a big statement. Okay. So I'll give you an example, Michael. So I know your profile. You can do 1,000 jobs. You can do 1,000 jobs. I know you can. I know your profile. Will you do a job? That's a totally different question, right? Will you do that job day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, right? Therefore, back to the formula: improving my retention, decreasing my turnover, increasing my productivity, my engagement, my culture, my bottom line, making that bottom line robust, and making sure that I make more money.
Got it. Got it. Okay, so let's get into some real world examples here.
Sure.
Obviously, without naming any names that you're dealing with, any stories of companies that you've stepped in, you've helped with, you've identified those silent killers and cut them out, or any stories like that you have after doing the index that you've kind of helped that client turn their business around or get them in the right direction, essentially.
Yeah, essentially that's what they pay me to do, right? So here's I'll give you a couple stories that I'm really proud of, actually. So we have a big retailer that we deal with, very big retailer, and that retailer was having troubles with what we call basket size. Okay, so the shopper was going into the location. They the year previous, or 2 years previous, they were buying a lot, and now their basket size was decreasing. They weren't spending a lot anymore. When we actually did a deep dive on that, we said, okay, do we have the right people in the right roles, right? So who actually greets the customer as they come into the location? Who actually helps the customer out? Who does the suggesting? Who does that? And we looked at profiles, and we looked at what profile would be best at that job. Okay, so we assessed the role. When we assessed the role, and then we assessed the people that were already in the role, there were some misses, right? And there were some misses that, this retailer thought, yeah, we're hiring the right people, but they weren't. These people were still great, and they still had other roles that they could do within the company. So they weren't losing jobs. We were just switching them up a little bit. So as we hired more people, we hired to that profile of what we were looking for: somebody social, somebody engaging, somebody quickly connects with people, somebody who is impatient for results, has low patience, but wants to have a higher sense of drive, higher sense of urgency, somebody who was detailed, listened to the customer, right? And when we actually did that in some test locations first and hired only to the profile, the basket size increased by 27%. So 27% in a basket size, they're already spending money. Now think of that. Over and over, they're increasing that basket size by 27% on average. Now all of a sudden we have some money coming in the organization, right? I'll give you another example. We work with a manufacturer, and they were already a client, and they were using us for high-level jobs: management, middle management, VPs, directors, and whatnot. And we said to them, listen, why aren't you using it for those lower level laborer jobs? Okay. And I don't like to say lower level, but laborer jobs, less pay, we'll say. Okay. And they said, well, it's the person's just, stocking shelves and moving things around and whatnot. And this is a big manufacturer. Okay. And I said, but if you look at your turnover, the largest part of your turnover is that role. And they said, yes. And I said, okay, so we need to assess that. And as part of their process, and it was a high level job, lots of, students applying for it, summer jobs, when they actually filtered out who they actually need and who had the behaviors based on having to be patient, staying there for 8 hours, doing something mundane, not really exciting and whatnot, what personality could take that, as opposed to think of the person in the retailer that would leave right away. They couldn't take that. When we did that with them, they improved their retention by 4.3%. So 4.3% in a big company, that's massive amounts of dollars, right? So that's huge dollars, right?
Right.
And the way we work is you pay for, if you're a company, you pay for a subscription with us, right? Depending on the size of your company, determines the price. Here's what's great about that: it's unlimited. So now you're not hoarding assessments thinking, I'm not going to give Michael an assessment. I already know him. I don't need to. I'm giving everybody in my company an assessment. I'm giving everybody that's coming into my company an assessment. So I know my company, and I actually build my talent, right? And optimize my talent, right? And that's two stories that actually equate to money in the bottom line, right? So when you do that for a customer, when you solve a problem like that for them, a people problem, which is all their problems, every company's problems, when you solve that problem for them, they sleep better at night. They make more money. And it's important to have healthy culture, but isn't it great to have healthy culture and make money at the same time? Right? That's the key, right?
Absolutely. We want to take a break from today's episode to thank our sponsor, Cycle CPA. It's crucial to review your financial statements on a monthly basis so you can diagnose areas for improving your business's financial health early before they become significant issues. Too many contractors wait until the end of the year to review their financials as they file taxes, when it's often too late to take action to change the outcome. Cycle CPA not only handles bookkeeping and taxes, but they also ensure that you're armed with financial data on a monthly basis to make key business decisions. They offer benchmarking, cash flow forecasting, and assistance in developing targets for financial metrics. With their team of accountants specialized in the hardscape and landscape industry, they currently work with hundreds of companies in this field. Visit cyclecpa.com, and for $200 off, mention the How to Hardscape podcast. Now back to our episode. This is Marty Grunder on hiring and providing employees with a career path within your business. When it comes to, and something that's been on my mind lately, and I've been having more and more guests on the show to talk about, is employees. And it's something that this year we're kind of focusing on with the podcast. So I want to talk to you about hiring and finding employees and giving employees a career path within your business. I guess we can start from the beginning there and hiring and what that kind of process looks like. Is there any tips or tricks in terms of the interview process, the finding of the employees, that initial process of is this person going to be a good fit in our business? I've heard a lot of different things, so I'll just leave it with you for that, Marty. Basically, where does that kind of process start with GLC?
You know, gosh, we could talk for seriously. We could probably come on each day for the next 3 months talking about this. It's it's a struggle, and the hundreds of landscaping companies that we work with on an annual basis at the Grow Group. It's a struggle for all them. I've been in business 40 years, and it's a struggle here, Michael. I'm in the Steel Studios on the campus of Grunder Landscaping, and we struggle with that too. Like, it's none of us are going to escape it. I would think if you've got somebody coming on your podcast and telling you they have hiring figured out, I'm sorry, they're lying. They don't. It's just a constant moving target. And I guess I would back up. I mean, it's a fairly commonly held belief. It's not hard to understand that your company's success has a lot to do with your clarity of purpose. And what I mean by that is, who's our ideal client? And for us, when we teach that here at the Grow Group, the ideal client is the intersection between who do you make the most money off of, which ones do you enjoy working with, all right, and which ones are sustainable. And sustainable, we mean like which ones can we build a business around? I'd love to tell you that if you go on the Grunder Landscaping website and you look at some of those large, elaborate, some of them are $1 million jobs we've done, that's all we do, and yada. We don't. We do one or two big jobs a year. Most of our jobs are in the $10,000 to $30,000 range on the landscape side. And then we do a tremendous amount of maintenance, but it's just not sustainable. That's what I mean by that. So the same thing goes for, once you identify who your ideal client is, identifying that ideal team member. If you're predominantly commercial maintenance focused or predominantly residential focused, it's maintenance, you might have a lot of work visas that you rely on that make your company work. And even on the design build side, you may be the same. But what I'm getting at is, if you know who your ideal client is, you should also have a profile for an ideal team member. And I think where we go wrong is, we work with a lot of guys and gals in the Grow Group that they still work in the field a lot. And so it's hard for them to catch their breath and to do an interview. It's hard for them, in some cases, to have office hours to try to find time to interview. And then where do you interview? And you're competing against all of the restaurants and the Amazons and all the other companies that would take an hourly worker. We're not having a tremendous problem finding professionals to add to our staff, and we don't have a whole lot of, everyone at our company is a professional. But what I'm getting at is, we don't have a hard time finding salespeople or other management positions. That's not as hard as finding labor. I would assume your listeners, the struggle is labor. I know, like at my house, I'm trying to find a contractor to kind of do a mini remodel on our bathroom. Can't find anybody. Found a guy, and he said, I'd love to come see you, but I don't have any employees, so I couldn't even do the work this year. So you were seeing a lot of that. So, from a commonsensical approach, Michael, the best way to find people is to make your place a great place to work. And I think we forget that. We focus on some other things rather than that. Not creating a culture that someone else would want to work in. I think a lot like, what I want to work for me. If I went to work for Michael at your company, what would I want? My son worked here for 3 years while I was going through college. When my older daughters all got their first job and would come home and would talk to me, and I would hear them tell me some things, I'm like, what a bunch of idiots. What are they doing? Why would they treat you like that? But I also heard a lot of, man, you mean they did an orientation for you and the owner took you out to lunch and talked to you about where the company was going? Yeah. Well, I need to do that. I'm not doing that. My people have no idea where we're trying to go or what we're trying to do. So we could have a very, very long, discussion here. But I think at the end of the day, you got to understand what kind of work culture you want. Look around the existing team you have, or think about the team members that you've had in the past that have been successful, And what were the traits? Did they come from a particular part of town? Were they from a farming community? Were they did you tap into a vein of volunteer firefighters that also wanted to work for you 4 days a week so they could balance that? Trying to see in the past where we've had success, and that has helped us. We're currently interviewing for an open position we have here at Grunder Landscaping. We put the bait in the water out on Indeed. We've had 5 candidates respond that got beyond the initial interview that we thought we wanted to interview. 2 of them never showed up, Michael. The other 3 were all between 5 and 30 minutes late for the interview. And I think by me telling you the story, you'll see where I'm coming from, and maybe your listeners will have the courage to do what I did not do 25 years ago. 25 years ago, Michael, I'd be like, okay, well, I'm sorry you're late. Let's talk. And then I'd hire them, and then they're on time for work 2 weeks. And then guess what starts happening? They're late. They got another problem. There's all this going on, and they turn into a high maintenance team member that you just want to get rid of, and you're trying to figure out how to get rid of them. Well, we've learned enough now that if when you come to that interview, you're never going to look better, be better, smell better, appear better. We're never going to need you more than we do right now. So the easy thing to say is to overlook any inadequacies you see, overlook the fact that they were late, but we don't do that anymore. We send them all on their way, even though we need someone, even though we really need someone. We send them on their way because introducing a poor performer, which your behavior is really going to indicate what we're going to see from you going forward. It's probably not going to be better. It's probably going to be worse because you're on an interview. I mean, it's kind of like when you sell your house, you put up for sale, you clean it, right? I mean, you go crazy. It's, it's just how life is. You're going on an interview, you're going to be on your best, not your worst. So I think that's what I would like your listeners to take away, that no matter how bad you need some, remember that whoever you add to your team, they're either impressing everyone or they're depressing everyone. And if they're depressing everyone, you can actually make an argument that the company got worse. And what ends up happening when we add bad actors or bad performers to a good team, the good team, they can get tired of that. And they may just say, Michael, look, I like you, but I found another job. And you may not find out the real reason. You may think it's because Amazon's going to pay them more, but maybe Charlie, who you hired last month, drives them crazy, and they're a non-confrontational person, so they don't come to you and say, look, either Charlie goes or I go. They just leave. They just leave the organization. So hiring is a really difficult thing. We do a really good job at that here at Grunder, but that's after 40 years, Michael. I mean, I ought to be pretty good at that by now. Some other tips to give you on the interview. We have 110 employees, 110 team members now. So I don't interview anybody anymore. The only time they get me involved, on rare occasions when we're hiring a salesperson or an upper level manager and they want to get my take because it's not clear to them if this person is a fit or not, I'll get involved. But I stay out of it. I don't stay out of it because I'm, quote, too busy. I don't stay out of it because I think I'm so important. I stay out of it because they're going to be working with them. They own it. And I have to let them know that they own it, that it's their responsibility. If I still say, well, you go ahead and you call through all of them and then I'll come in and interview them. If you think about that, I'm basically saying, look, I only think you're so smart. I'm never going to let you hire somebody. So, those that are listening to your podcast today, Michael, that, maybe they have 20 people, I'd say at that level, really even over 10, it's time to get someone else involved in the hiring. It's time to have a profile of what an ideal team member would look like. It's time to in that process of developing that profile of an ideal team member, look who around that you like. Look who you'd like to clone, and then go and interview accordingly. If you really like Jimmy because Jimmy is organized and he's on time, then you don't go to your candidate and say, hey, now organization's important to you, right? Being on time is important to you. What do you think they're going to say? You ask them questions like, tell us what's important in a great employee at a landscaping company. Tell us about some conflicts that you had at your prior job with supervision and how you handled it. Tell us what you do for fun. We had somebody years ago when I was interviewing him for a landscaping position on the crew. I asked them what they did for fun, and they said, well, I sure as hell don't do landscaping because after doing that all day, I don't want to do that crap. Well, Michael, we didn't hire that person, all right, because you're referring to our profession as crap, and that just was a bad omen. So looking for people that have a passion for landscaping, looking for people that have had prior experience getting along with people. We love hiring former athletes. If they were on a high school football team, we love that. If they went to college and they worked to get through college, we love that. So those are just some things I think to look for. It is a very difficult thing, the process of hiring. We're doing this podcast here in the spring when, no matter how big or small or experienced your company is, every landscaper's busy in the spring. Something is seriously wrong with you if you're not busy in April, May, and June. I mean, everybody can find work. It's beyond that. So right now, faced with trying to get work done, make payroll, all those other things, I think we end up settling a lot and bring people into our organization that we think on the surface are going to help us, and they don't. They actually hurt the organization.
There's a lot of things to go off of with what you're just talking about there. One thing that came to mind was with how long you guys have been in business for. Has the reputation that you've built or invested in the local community, has that helped in any way in attracting people, or is that more the admin professional side of things rather than the labor? What has that sort of reputation build helped with in hiring?
Well, that's helped tremendously. I mean, we have 40 years of trying to do the right thing, 40 years of giving back to the community, 40 years of treating people fairly. If you go on Google, sure, we have a couple disgruntled people that got terminated because of their behavior, their performance, and they go online and say, Marty's a ruthless, soulless, you know what? But we push the limit on what we can do. We try to do as many benefits as we can. We try to make this a great place to work. We survey our team once a year. We're constantly having feedback. That's one of my jobs as in my role here is to be listening to our people. I was on 3 job sites this morning. How's it going? What's going on? How's your truck? How's the job going? How's the family? I want our people to know that we care about them. So yeah, sure, the reputation absolutely has helped, but your reputation can get ruined in a heartbeat. So it's not like you say, well, we got reputation figured out, so we don't have to worry about that. No, we got to keep, as we get bigger and bigger, we got to listen, you got my last name on your shirt. You've got to act in a certain way. I mean, we have core values we talk about all the time. We have 8 non-negotiable statements that we recite with our team. So, that's all very intentional. There's a certain way that you've got to behave if you want to work here. We're not your average landscaping company, and we're not a fit for everyone, Michael. And I think maybe that's hard to understand and to cope with. But when you get tough like that and you really take the hiring serious, that again, this person is either going to impress everyone or depress them, that's a big deal.
This is Tony Bass on hiring for delegation and making your business a desirable place. That's excellent insight. Thank you so much. And that leads right into my next question. Line in the book, 3 simple words I've just got in my notes here. Hiring for delegation. How does a business owner go about hiring for delegation and knowing that might be somebody that you can delegate tasks to?
Well, what I have found in my career as a business owner is that when you can get alignment of someone's interest with your needs, then you can delegate things much more effectively. I'll give you an example right now. We have today in my company, and I just reflecting on it last night. I play racquetball about 3 days a week, and I absolutely love the sport. And it's a sport for old guys. Don't see a lot of young guys doing it, but my one of my racquetball buddies was telling me about the landscaping company where his wife is the office manager, and the owner of that landscaping company is literally right down the street from our manufacturing facility. I recruited to come to work in my landscaping business while he was still in college. And so the idea that we're going to recruit people not for experience, but for interest is a novel idea for a lot of folks. You see, if I'm willing to recruit people for interest, I'm not looking for experience. And when I'm not looking for experience, guess what? I don't have to pay as much as the guy down the road who's always advertising for experience. So if I hire, in this case, I'll use the name Sammy. It's not Sammy, but if I said, I'm going to go down here and I'm going to find somebody who's interested in becoming a professional landscaper, and then I create an environment that they feel safe at, that they feel like they can contribute to, then I can hire Sammy to give him that opportunity, and I'll pay him less than what I'll pay somebody who has the experience. So when I say I'm hiring to delegate, I'm hiring with the intention of training someone. On day one, we're going to begin the orientation. And by the time they leave on day one, they are going to understand how our company operates and something about the tasks they're going to be doing. They still aren't going to be experts at it on day one, but we're going to do everything we can to get them excited about the journey of what they're going to go through. And so we have a successful recruiting internship program here in my manufacturing business. We intentionally seek out and hire high school age and college age kids every single position in our company. As a matter of fact, when I wrap up here with you today, we have a job fair event here at our facility for these kids that are either still enrolled in high school or have just graduated from high school, who are looking for jobs where they get to use their hands, because that's the kind of jobs we have available in the manufacturing business that we're advertising for. And it's the exact same, every time I advise a client in the landscaping business, you got to have an internship program. You got to have a way to get some young, energetic people to come into your company and begin the process of learning. When you started your company, the amount of interest that you had in learning something new to make you better at what you're doing in hardscape, that excitement has to happen with your new people. And so when I think about delegation, it's the secret, man. The more people I can leverage and delegate to, the more we're going to grow. And I hope that's what you're looking for. I don't know if that's what you're looking for or not. But.
Yeah, absolutely. If it's okay with you, I think if you still have time, like 20 minutes or so, are you still good for? Or
no, I'm good. I'm
okay.
good.
I don't want to hold you up too much, but I've got tons of questions that are coming into me as you talk there. So with that, the employees, how did you make your company then and even now a desirable place to be when you were first hiring them, as opposed to them going to work for a competing company or just another company in general? How did you create an environment that was desirable, and how did you communicate that to potential prospects that you are a desirable company to come work for?
If you go to the website superlawntrucks.com/internships, if you went to that site, you would see that our company has documented the journey of young people who have entered our company with little to no experience, agreed to come on and work for a period of time. And we do pay our interns. We don't ask them to work for free, but we hire people right now, and people that are listening to your podcast are going to giggle when they hear this, because they may not even believe what I'm about to say, but I promise you it's the gospel of how I operate. We will hire people, and we have people working on payroll today for $10 an hour. For $10 an hour. And most contractors today are hiring somewhere north of $15 and $20 an hour. And I'm going to tell you, you don't have to if you shop in the right place for the right person with the right interest. And so we first begin with that idea about interest. They got to have an interest in what you're doing. If they have an interest in what you're doing, and then you can show them a little bit about a pathway. And the best way to explain a pathway is to give examples of other people who have come to your organization and they have worked their way up in responsibility and up in pay. The vast majority of our employees today at my company will see their pay double within the first 24 months. And so we have a very steady and aggressive incremental pay increases based on these accomplishments within the job. Now, if I put this into my landscaping company perspective, on day one, hour one, we have to explain how critical it is that to have a clean and green lawn and landscape, you must pick up the trash before you mow the grass. And if you fail to do that, you've got a bigger job that costs more to clean up, more to fix up. So we got to teach people about the importance of walking around with a bucket and picking up trash. That's an entry-level position in the lawn maintenance service business. But within 30 days, someone better have mastered the art of using the bucket and picking up the trash, because if they have, they're going to be able to step up to using power tools, weed eaters and trimmers and blowers. And when they master the power tools, they're going to get an increase in pay. When they master they could punch in and punch out with the company systems on a daily basis. If they, are responsible for any paperwork, they turn the paperwork in promptly. We have to teach behavior. If we can teach behavior in the earliest days of employment and increase people's wages quickly, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, 120 days, 180 days. Have you given your employees 6 raises in 6 months? That would be a benchmark for getting people excited. Now, be careful. Contractors historically give out raises called dollar bills, like bubble gum. But the fact is that dollar bills are not dollar bills. They are an equivalent of $2,000 a year in incremental pay increase based on a full-time schedule working 40 hours a week for 50 weeks. And so as contractors, we got to have a plan of giving smaller but more frequent increases in pay. Smaller. When's the last time, Michael, you gave out a 16-cent raise? Never. Well, here's the fact. If you give out 16 cents today, and you didn't even mention it to the employee, here's what's going to happen. They will not come to you and say, hey, Michael, you overpaid me. Will you please fix my pay and move it back down? So you don't go to them and you tell them, hey, I'm going to give you a 16-cent raise. You just do it. And you know what? They're going to go, I got an increase in pay. That's pretty cool. But if you say, hey, I've been thinking about the way you're running that bucket out there, and man, you've even stepped up to the string trimmer. Now I'm going to give you 16 cents. Then they're going to feel a little shafted, okay, over 16 cents. And so how we handle the incremental increases can make a big impact on the perception to the employee. So, hey, you know what? You stick around for 30 days, you're going to get an increase.
Very interesting. I like that. Very interesting. But what do you think about performance pay in terms of whether it's weekly, you complete tasks on time, you get some sort of performance pay, or it's just a company-wide bonus structure? What are your thoughts on any of that?
I'll give you two stories. First one, most contractors understand that if you follow the Fair Labor Standards Act, put in practice, I believe it was 1933, just a little earlier than you and I came around. In other words, this has been fundamental to our society for 100, coming up on 90 years, a little over 91 years. You will pay someone overtime wages when they work over 40 hours in a 7-day period. That's a 50% increase in pay. The challenge today is that the average work week, according to the federal wage and hour, if you work more than 40 hours, you got to get paid overtime. But the average work week in America today, 34.1 hours. When we ask our employees to work 45, 50, 55 hours, we are asking them to do something that is not in alignment with the practices of most employees today. Now, in the case of manufacturing, the average work week is about 41 hours a week. But if you go across all U.S. employees, it is, in fact, about 34 hours a week. So to keep people engaged, in my view, you better not cheat them. Okay, you better not cheat them. You better pay them overtime wages if they work over 40 hours. Second thing, we do a horrible job as contractors to teach new people about the requirements expected of employers. Here's an example. As an employer, we are required by the Fair Labor Standards Act to match Social Security wages. Social Security is a requirement of 7.65% when you combine Social Security and Medicare benefits. 7.65% is taken out of the employee's paycheck and sent into the federal government. I call them Fedzilla. Fedzilla gets 7.65 of your paycheck. Well, guess what? I'm the employer. I'm matching that 7.65%, sending it in on your behalf. Did you know you have a retirement program by working at my company? You have a retirement program working at my company. And you know what? If you go down the street to the guy that's paying you cash, you got no retirement program. So, you can think about this as you evaluate employers. Here's the second thing. When our company complies with the state and federal standards, guess what? On your behalf, not a red cent out of your check, we contribute to the federal unemployment tax, which is called FUTA, and we contribute to the state unemployment tax for the state that you're working in. And if in fact we have to lay you off because of a lack of work or something terrible happens in our economy, you are going to be eligible to go down to the place or do it online, the unemployment office, and you're going to be able to apply for and receive free money. That's if you work at our company. I don't know what you might get down the street with the guys paying you cash, but I'll guarantee you, you will not have that benefit. Here's the next thing. Stick with me for a little bit. You know why? Because if you will, you are going to become eligible for our company's retirement program. Now, you'll have to be here for a year to get this, but with a year with the company, we're going to match dollar for dollar up to 3% of your gross wages. That means if you make $40,000 here, we're going to give you 3% or $1,200 free money put into your retirement program. Now, here's the best news of all. In order for me to give you that $1,200, you need to make a commitment to put in $1,200. But if you put in $1,200 and I put in $1,200, that's $2,400. Now, while you're here thinking about this position, I want to give you this article which explains exactly how you become a millionaire while working here at this company by having a steady contribution of just $2,000 a year. And I have an article that I give out to all my employees. It's called Rich Man, Poor Man. Not Rich Dad, Poor Dad, not Robert Kiyosaki, but Rich Man, Poor Man. And it explains the power of compounding and how it's each person's responsibility to save part of their wages and put it into a retirement program. And so, what it boils down to, and yes, we've got, the holidays, which they get paid for. And yes, we've got vacation, which is steadily increasing the longer someone stays in our company. And I always like to point out, and you see Manny back here. Manny gets a month off each year while working here. Now, he's had to stay here for 20 years to get that month off, but we pay him to go play with his kids a month each year. Plus, he gets another week for holidays. So, you know what? It's a pretty good deal here. 5 weeks off is what Manny gets. So I like to use Manny as the example. But then there's other people, with different benefits programs. So you need to have a benefits program, Michael, is what I'm trying to say, because there are companies that have wonderful benefits programs. We don't have the best. We don't have the best in the world. But what I'm going to do, and what every hardscape contractor needs to do, is recognize that they are in the sales job. You must sell the opportunity to work in your business as a good, healthy place to work that's going to treat them with respect, listen to them when they have ideas or concerns, and always feel like they're being treated fairly. And I'll tell you this, when somebody's going to quit and move on, they come to you and they say, hey, Michael, I've been thinking about this pay I get around here, and I'm thinking I need a little more. I need a little more. And, when they decide that they need more money, if they can't get it from you, you kind of force them to go out and get it from somewhere else. And so when someone is coming to you and asking specifically for increases in pay, it's a pretty good sign that you need to be working on the plan of how you're going to increase people, how you're going to challenge them to take the next little step in your company. And here's another example. We have some wonderful technical certification programs in our industry. ICPI, has a certified paver installer. They got certified segmental, retaining wall certification. When someone has the mental capacity and the energy to go and get certified, the day they receive that certificate is the day they need an increase in pay, because you've got to recognize them and put them on a pedestal as a good example of what you want out of your team. And so, when I write a job offer to someone, we go ahead and write the job offer to say, and you are eligible to receive up to, and I'd never call it $1. It's $2,000, $2,000 in increases in pay if you achieve certification A. You're eligible for another $2,000 with certification B, another $2,000 with certification C, another $2,000 with certification D, and so on with E, and give them at least 5 different technical certifications that they can receive. And you didn't have to write these certifications. These are things that they would go out and get from a third party to make them more qualified to do the work at your company. And if you'll set up an incentive around that where they know that on day one, then you're going to remove some of the monkey that's on your back to always be increasing pay. You got to teach them how to increase their pay by giving them a guide.
We want to take a break from today's episode to thank our sponsor, Knowledge Tree Consulting. They are efficiency consultants in the industry with 35 plus years of industry experience building Oriole landscaping in Toronto, which they are completely hands off at this point. George and Peter have been on the podcast before, and George, on multiple occasions now, I've personally leaned on him to help with the How to Hardscape headquarters software and how we can maximize the efficiency of user experience. And I know the guys at DTE Landscaping, Chuck and Jeffrey, who we've also had on the show multiple times, have hired them on in the past. Check out their consulting services, peer groups, and events that are coming up on their website, knowledgetreeconsulting.com, or check them out on Instagram at joinktc. Now back to our episode. This is George Urvari of Knowledge Tree Consulting on getting buy-in on systems and finding open and positive employees. Okay, so walk me through that and establishing those systems. Did you have how did you get the buy-in from your employees for something like that when they're so used to so many years doing it one way? How did you get buy-in from the employees to embrace these systems and to, take more agency in your business and their career forward in your business? Or was it a matter of having to reorganize your business and maybe hire new people that were less adjusted to the way you had been doing them before?
Yeah, so about 15, 20 years ago, we started on the Kaizen process, so the philosophy of continual improvement. So everybody that had been with us understood the philosophy, and they understood the benefits of it. Now, change is painful and difficult, for sure. And there's obviously frustration in moving from A to Z. But once you get the alphabet down, you can spell, you can write sentences, you have the order and the language to communicate beautifully. And once I sorted out that, then it's no longer just buy-in. It's like a deep-rooted, it's a philosophy that the team embraces, and they perpetuate it without me. So, we want to be excellent. We don't want to be mediocre. So settling for mediocrity is not in the vocabulary, to the point where one of the tenets of Kaizen is people, culture, process, right? Well, the one thing I have absolute control over is the process, for sure. I can have a bad process or a good process. So an example, Michael, if you're a 10 and my process is a 2, you end up at a 5, right? So if I make my process a 1 and you're an 8, you're still awesome. Now, if you're 10, it's even better, right? And the other thing also that we learned, we started infusing different concepts like the Eisenhower matrix, which is urgent and important. So we only focus on 3 important urgent things at one time. That's it. And everything else falls to the wayside, unless it's an existential threat to the business. So what happens is we just, okay, we got to fix this. This is our priority. And we don't stop till it's done. And then it's resolved. Move on to the next problem. Rather than having 50 open accounts that we're trying to resolve, we get 3 done, 3 done, 3 done, a couple of quickies along the way here and there. And that concept that we infuse into how we run our meetings, how we run our business, accelerates our improvement exponentially. And it's a game changer. Essentially, it allowed me to get out of my business, the day-to-day completely. The business completely runs without me, and I have absolute confidence, not only in the people, but the system. So the people component is also important, right? So you got to have people that are open, that are positive. If they're not, they can't be part of our company. If you don't want to get better, work somewhere else. And so we only have essentially people that want to get better. And anybody new that comes in, first of all, when they see the order and the organization, they want to be part of it. So it's like a magnet, number one. And then number two, the people that are there won't accept mediocrity either. So it's like, man, so is it a people problem? Like, are you a bad person? Are you lazy? Or what's the issue? Okay, well, you're not bad, you're not lazy, then it must be a process problem. So you generally want to find out what's called the 5 whys. Why? Why is something going wrong? Is it a people problem? So the person has no character, they're lazy, apathetic, dishonest, whatever. If they've got good character, it's probably your fault. And so then it becomes a process problem. Well, how do we fix this through process? So the blame disappears, and you get this great place where you go to work and everybody you see at work, you're happy to see. Like, it's not like, oh, I got to deal with so-and-so today. Like, that just disappears. And once you get champions of that, not just one person, but everybody's on that train, it's automatic. It becomes a normal convention for the business. And so it takes time, like Rome wasn't built in one day. And if you continually work at it, you're going to get better. Here's another good one too. I just said the word and. I caught myself. I was going to say but. So but is a negative word. It's preclusive. It's excusive. So we use the word and it's hilarious because when I do coaching for people, I can see that they're making excuses every time they say the word but. And so we make a joke of it. We say, okay, let's find out how often you use but in an hour. It's hilarious. And the higher the buts, the more problems. That's the irony in the whole exchange. So the idea is a joke. You kind of make, we're wired. It's not because you're a bad person. You literally are wired with buts. And so get rid of the buts and turn them to ands, and anything's possible. And that's such a fun exercise to do.
Lots of things. I'm just taking notes as you're talking here, and lots of things that I want to go over what you just said there. First being, you mentioned 3 important things roughly that you want to take on at any given time to improve. Now, with something like admin, sales, production, can you have 3 different things in each of these areas? Or is this as a company, you'll take on 3 different things and you'll work together on them? Those sales, admin, and the production will all work towards those 3 things.
Right. So if you think about problems, what's your biggest problem? So let's say your production's poor, okay? And you need to fix that. Well, it won't help you very much if the drawings aren't right. So first, let's get the office in order and then get all those things out of the way. Then we can train how to read a drawing, how to lay out a site, and how to get efficient on site. But the primary problem is the poor information in the drawing. So, give somebody poor instructions, you're going to get a lot of phone calls. So there's an enormous amount of effort up front. And most people are not willing or don't have the patience, or don't have a system to perpetuate excellence. And systems perpetuate excellence. The best example of that is a sports team. You go to the practice, you practice, and then you play, you get a score, and then you see what went wrong, what went right. You practice the weaknesses, which is essentially the planning session, right? But you start from the head. There's no point fixing your foot if your brain is taking you off a cliff every time. And so one of the things that we do that's really powerful is we have a SWOT exercise that we do. And it basically starts with psychology. 10 psychology questions. What's your psychology? Then we go to leadership. Like, how much do you actually know about leadership? Most people know nothing about leadership. That's the amazing part. So that's the head. What am I doing? Where are we going? What's the party? What are we doing? What are we not doing? When should we do it? Who should be involved? Who shouldn't be involved? And then we go to the 5 pillars of business, which is economics, which is money, insurance, law. We go to operations, sales and marketing, HR, and technology, not necessarily in that order. And then we have 2 more categories. One is continual improvement. Okay, so what's your method to continually improve perpetually? And then last but not least, we go to growth. Because most people want to grow the top line when really we should grow the bottom line. So first you get rid of first you get efficient, then you streamline, you optimize, and then you grow. And there's like 7 different ways to grow, which most people don't realize. So they grow the wrong way, they grow the wrong time, they say yes to everything, they say yes to the wrong jobs, the wrong neighborhoods, there's a whole bunch of constraints to what you should and shouldn't do. So for example, let's say I wanted to lose weight. What's the easiest way for me to lose weight? Well, it's to stop doing bad things, which is eating junk food or eating sugar. Or you know what? Maybe I'll do intermittent fasting. I won't eat as much. Great. So essentially not doing silly things is the first step. And then the second part, which is harder in my mind, is doing the right things, which is, guess what? Doing exercise, right? But we can get a lot better by just not doing bad things. The biggest takeaway I've learned in all the businesses that I've consulted is people's openness, and I think their understanding of risk. And most people have a horrible understanding of risk. They equate uncertainty with risk, which are two different things. And that precludes them from the opportunity to make smart investments. So they try and save their way to profitability instead of invest their way to profitability. And so the biggest gap is leadership. The companies that have great leaders do so much better, so much faster. And leadership is a choice. So if you're not educating yourself about leadership and about business, right? You should have gone to business school, but you didn't. So here's your opportunity to get better, but you didn't. And you're going to try and get little tips all over the place to try and build your wealth of knowledge, which will take forever. There's 1,200 folders in every business, 1,200 folders to run a business. And you, as a small business, need to know all of them, which is kind of insane. And you neglect finance, right? You neglect leadership and you wing it. And then operations are a whole other kettle of fish. That's the easiest thing to fix. Operations, most people are sort of operations hands-on people. And even that is a disaster for most companies. So process, and people, and then you'll have great culture with great leadership. So that's sort of the overview, I guess, roundabout answer.
Talking about people, where have you been able to find these people that you describe as open and positive to fit into your business? And can you, if they don't have one, but they have the other, can you mold them into the other?
So it's a lot of work to mold people, and hopefully you come into the company with character. So it's a great question. So when you think about this is another opportunity for everybody listening to this. You know, there's our association, Landscape Ontario in Canada. It's a networking opportunity. And there's two types of sales, low-level sales. So it's like, you know, business to client or business to business. And then there's networking. And that's another type of sales. Who are you connected with, right? So those connections for us now, we're in the business acquisition mode. We're buying businesses. So how do I find the talent? I just buy a business. Not hard to do. You just have to have money to do it. And so we don't have a talent problem because I can just buy it. The other thing that we do is we have profits, so we invest those in headhunters. So we will get the talent through acquisition. We'll pay for it. And if you have a great employee, and let's say you spend $15,000 to get that talent, over 10 years, that's peanuts. And, you know, people are afraid to spend the money on headhunting. And surprise, surprise, your labor pool doesn't get better much faster. And here's another interesting concept for those of people that are listening. Talent is scarce. Like, talent is scarce. And most people are afraid to spend the money on talent. Now, imagine the Toronto Maple Leafs, maybe I shouldn't use that as an example, but they didn't have Austin Matthews. It wouldn't be that great. Or back in the day, you didn't have Sidney Crosby. It wouldn't be that great. Like, they're game changers. So there are certain game-changing agents in your business. It's a person, generally. Hopefully the leader is amazing or learns to become amazing. There are assets, equipment, right? Software, and then processes. And you need all amazing things. It's like your car's running on, 8 cylinders and 2 of the cylinders are misfiring. It's not a very good experience. And that's your business. So we got to play with A's. Like, there's no settling for B's, and it takes time. So, if I was going to be hard, which is one of my tendencies, I like to look at people as assets or liabilities, and it's like a balance sheet. There's no in between. So I got to move you from one side of the ledger to the other. And if you have a clean balance sheet, it's beautiful assets with high ROI, low depreciation. And people are the exact same thing. Now, it could be that you hired the wrong person. It's your fault. Could be the person isn't right for that role. It could be that it's not because the people are bad. It's literally because they're misaligned with what you need them to do or what they want to do. And so you can't force people to do things. You have to make them want to do it. And that's another part of leadership most people are really, really falling short on. They don't inspire their team. So there's a lot of moving parts to it, but this can all be learned. On my high networking side, one of the things that I did about 20 years ago is I joined a golf and country club, and I hang out with like people that are way above my pay grade, and it's expensive, but it's an investment, and I get to exercise and I get to hang out with super smart people that have been places I've never been, done things I've never done, and I'm learning from these people. So those are game changers. Talent is scarce. Well, hang around with the talent and you will, by definition, absorb some of that experience. One of the guys I play with is the vice dean of the Rotman Business School, for example. Pretty useful. I've got CEOs and CFOs and presidents of giant corporations that share all kinds of insights with me. Man, it makes a huge difference in my business acumen. And then I use that in my consulting. So, that networking is huge. Landscape Ontario is a great outlet for people to network with higher level companies that have been there, done that. If you're in I call it the silo of stupidity. So essentially you're in your little lane and you don't see what's around you. You become myopic, and that's not going to help you. Yes, you can work harder. You can work longer. It's unsustainable. And eventually you'll burn out, you'll get a divorce or both. And, I've watched, I've been in business 38 years and I've been coaching for probably 15 years. And say the last 3 years, I've formalized it now where we've processed our consulting. And, it's really interesting to see different people at different stages of business and different states of business. So stages are essentially things like, I'm just new to the business. Maybe I've got, my first admin person. Maybe I've got a few admin people. So there's these stages. Maybe I'm finally turnkey, which is unusual. And then there's states of business. So I'm in chaos mode. I'm in scramble mode. I'm in restructuring mode. I'm in growth mode, which most people are in growth mode while they're in chaos, which is not a good idea. And then essentially you're in turnkey acquisition mode where you're buying businesses. And so the pain of all of that essentially can be eliminated through learning and process and of course, leadership. But it's all doable. So it's really interesting to watch the companies that, improve way faster compared to other companies that are just sort of running, nothing changes, nothing changes. So it's kind of neat to see those journeys of our clients, like watching them shine. Some of them a little slower than others, obviously, because you might have a leader that will never be as good a leader as, say, Sidney Crosby, and so that team won't win the Stanley Cup, but they're certainly going to do better. They won't finish last in their division, for example.
Really quick, is there any commonalities in those types of people versus the people that are able to grow much faster in terms of their personalities? Is it risk aversion? Is it a lack of belief in oneself? Is there any commonalities that you see in those people that are a little bit more stagnant for longer periods of time?
Yeah, so absolutely. So we do Myers-Briggs assessments on everybody in our consulting with the teams. And so I'll sort of use myself as the benchmark, right? So I'm extroverted. I'm an ENTJ, extroverted, intuitive. Okay, so I sense things. I am able to forecast in the future. So my whole world is in the future. I'm thinking, so I'm highly analytical, and I'm judging. So I categorize and judge, and that makes me very good at decision making. Not to say I don't make mistakes, but I get to yes way faster than most people. And so what's really cool about that personality profile, now there's the introverted version of me, right? And so certain personality profiles are way better at decision making than others, or they're way better at objective data rather than subjective data. So some people feel and some people think. So thinkers generally end up being better leaders. Having said that, there are some exceptions, and you can get somebody who feels and judges. So that's an interesting cat, and they can do really well. But there's also 13 leadership styles, right? So sometimes you're the right leader at the right time for the right situation. And an example of that would be, let's say in a war, you might want a Churchill, but after the war, you don't want a Churchill, right? So yes, your psychological profile has a huge impact on what kind of leader you're going to be. You could be an inspirational leader. That doesn't mean you can manage yourself out of a box, right? And so the beauty of an organization is it's not just you, it's other people. So for example, for my personality, what I have weaknesses. Every one of them has a weakness. So my weakness is feeling. My feeling is not as naturally developed as somebody who has a high feeling function. So to inspire people, maybe I'm not the guy. But if you want to have great processes or you want action and decisions, I'm your person. And so the trick is to create a system where you get your team members together, sometimes an outside consultant. Some people have external CFOs, external CEOs, and they help you inform your decisions so you're not in your silo of stupidity. Because you can't be everything. You can't be, hard on process, and they say hard on process, soft on people, if that's not your natural disposition. So what's cool about it is once you learn this and you start to become self-aware because you have language and tools you can apply to yourself and then compare yourself to others, but not like I'm better, I'm different, and then say, wow, there's a wicked gap there, or I can see that person's talents here. And that's how you build your team. So your team is hopefully not all, it's like having, too many chiefs and not enough Indians. That would be awful if my company was built of all the NTJs. There's a company that we buy from, and they have over 100 trucks, and they only hire introverts for their truck drivers. And the reason is they don't get out and yap. They're happy to work alone all day in the truck. They listen to their country music or whatever they do, and they're happy, right? Put an extrovert in the truck, he's got to get out and talk to people. He's got to get a coffee, right? So you wonder why the productivity is much lower for that person. That person's in the wrong role. So, the personalities, and when you're a smaller company, you don't have a choice. You have 2 employees. But once you start to grow, it's kind of neat to go, hey, that's interesting. This person might not be a right fit for this role. Here's why. And you can actually, this is hilarious. So on Indeed, you can go on to Myers-Briggs and take a Myers-Briggs test and for free find out your profile, right? Now, it takes a bit of work to learn all the intricacies of how they interrelate, and there's all kinds of interesting things. But that's available for free on Indeed. And, I recommend everybody take it. There's another test that you can take. I think it costs a bit of money, like $10 or something. And it's Jordan Peterson's Big 5 personality tests. And again, that's very, very intuitive. So let's say you're low on openness, right? So there's pros and cons. Some people who are very family oriented, very sort of provincial, very protective, they can have a great little life, but maybe not so great as an entrepreneur. And everything has a flip side. You have a coin, it has 2 sides. Believe me, whatever good there is in me, there's an opposite side that isn't so good. And the beautiful thing is if I get somebody else to offset my weakness, that's how you build a great team. Once you understand and you respect, other people for their talents and their differences.
This is Jim Huston on building a high-performance team that requires minimal supervision. Okay, we'll get back on track here and tackle the how to build a high-performance team that requires minimum supervision. 2 things that stand out to me, 2 keywords from this: high performance and minimum supervision. So for a jumping off point in this, Jim, what defines a high performance and what defines minimum supervision in this
Sure.
statement that we have?
high performance means that you got a team out there that's, excited, and they're able to bring jobs in on budget. And to me, that's a good thing. And so I want them to minimally be able to bring jobs in on budget, whether it's a landscape maintenance account or whether it's a installer perform at a high level in order to meet those preset goals financially.
So bringing jobs in on budget is has to do with that high performance piece there. What do we do as a business owner to communicate to our employees as to what that budget is? Are you more like an open book, or where do you take that so that the employees know what it means to actually bring a job in on budget?
The main thing they have control over is the labor portion of the job. And so I'm going to talk to the team mostly in terms of labor hours budgeted to action. And so that's the one thing they have control over. They don't have control over what the materials cost and all this sort of thing, but they do have control over how productive they are and how well they pay attention to the project and get it done on here as well. There's just a lot of subtle things that go into that. But again, that's the main thing I'm going to give them. I'm going to set measurable and timeable goals for the crews on there. Measurable in that we have to get things done by a certain time. You have clear-cut projects, design specifications and so forth. So that's pretty clear. But then also we got to get it done by a certain time. So measurable and timeable.
Okay, so measuring these, I would see this as three different levels. You got the company level, company-wide level, the division, and then also the crew. You could even go a step below that and maybe even employee. But at what point, a crew measurable for a job, that's pretty easy. A division would be all these crews coming together. Do you actually measure and set goals at each of these levels between like employees, crews, division, and the company wide, and communicate that all around so that everybody's pushing in the same direction? Or do you focus more so in on that crew level to communicate what is measurable and what they need to hit?
Sure. It really starts with the crew level, at the crew level. And if the crews aren't producing at a high level of performance, everything else is going to crumble around it. But everybody in the different areas, for instance, the division manager should be managing his crews and setting goals for everybody. And then the cumulative goal is going to roll up into the whole division. And so, but it really starts at the crew level and basically setting clear goals for those crew leaders and then working with them on that. And the whole company needs to have clearly established goals for revenue, and then also for labor and so forth. But it's mostly revenue goals and then labor hour goals for the division on that and the whole company, essentially.
How would you tie in another position, like a salesperson position, into meeting these goals as opposed to a crew meeting goals, which are fairly obvious labor, or even a designer? Like, how do you go about creating goals for them, which are less obvious in terms of labor hours for crew?
Right. For a salesperson, they're going to have a sales goal. And let's say they have to sell $500,000 or $1 million worth of work, to cover all their expenses and to really justify having them out in the field working and selling projects or at the maintenance accounts. So they're going to be pretty measurable, and we're going to base their pay, maybe a base salary and then a commission on that. And I'd like to have the base pay be maybe 50% of everything they're going to earn. But about 50% of what they're going to earn is going to be based on performance on there as well. So we can work at establishing goals for everyone in the business. For the most part, even office staff and so forth, we can have objectives and goals for them as well.
Now, you've already mentioned the commission base for the salesperson. What about incentives or bonus structures or anything like that for those in the crew that meet those goals, those labor hour goals for projects? Have you ever toyed around with what those bonus incentive structures look like, and whether or not they're per job or per quarter or per year, and so on and so forth there for that? And that's a huge topic that I'm sure we
Sure.
could unravel here.
Yeah, performance pay for performance, whatever, piece rate. This is probably one of the most popular topics that I talk with my clients about. Almost everybody is asking me about performance pay. And this is where there are different ways of doing that. It's an area where we all need to really sort of do some more research on. There are different people championing this. I talked to a guy this morning. He's back in North Carolina. He knows a buddy in Florida who tried doing piecework pay last year, and he lost his shirt on it and got in trouble with the feds. So it's an area where I think you're absolutely right. We want to tie performance pay into the equation here, and it takes on various forms.
Definitely. And have you seen a structure that has been somewhat repeatable in the businesses that you have been able to consult with, where maybe they do it monthly or they do it quarterly or they revisit it? My concern, my thought process on it is like, what if I do it by job? I give them a bonus, but then we have to revisit that job because they were incentivized to get that done faster. Maybe they cut corners. We have to revisit it. I've already given them their bonus, and so on and so forth there.
We know you're dealing with hardscape projects yourself. And this is where it's a little tricky. I mean, you just can't, bonus somebody based on a project because, like you said, there could be problems down the road with it. So with say an installation team, whether it's plants, hardscape, whatever it might be, I like to have usually set up some sort of a bonus structure based on the labor hours in the budget, for the job. And if they go under hours in one job, well, that's fantastic. But then what if they go over on the next job? So I like to make it cumulative, for maybe a quarter and, for a particular crew. That way it evens out. Now, let me give you a couple of examples of some simple ways that you can incentivize people. And what you're trying to do here, it's very interesting, is that you're trying to get the crew member to think in terms of a cost benefit analysis. Okay. What I mean is that they're saying, hey, listen, I'm selling my labor to the company. Okay. And so I want to get the most amount of return for my labor that I possibly can. Normally people are thinking, okay, if I want more money, I need to work more hours. Well, we want to change that because we want to tie performance or pay to performance, meaning if I want to make more money, I need to think like an entrepreneur, become more efficient, and I need to generate more revenue with my labor hours that I'm selling to the company. So this is where it's a subtle transition in thinking as we make that change. But once people do, and not everybody gets it, there are some people that just don't get performance pay. They don't want to be paid based on performance. But the people that do, what we've seen in a lot of companies, we've seen a 20% improvement in performance, in productivity for people who embrace it and implement it as well. Let me give you a couple of examples. And this is where I think we need to differentiate between bonuses and incentives. Bonuses are sort of a attaboy. It's a nice thing to do, based on, past performance. It's not necessarily designed to change behavior. Incentives are exactly what they sound like. They're designed to incentivize people to change performance. Let me give you a good example. 25, 30 years ago, a client of mine on the East Coast, irrigation contractor, he had a service technician who was really underperforming. He was basically producing maybe 4 or 5 billable hours per day, and basically just wasn't getting it done. So what the owner did, and I thought this was sort of brilliant, he went to the irrigation tech and he said, Bill, from now on, I'm going to pay you $25 an hour. Now, remember, this is 25 years ago. $25 an hour was good pay 25 years ago. Today, it's almost expected for flipping hamburgers or whatever it is. But anyway, he said, Bill, I'm going to pay you $25 an hour for every billable hour you produce. I'm going to pay you $12 an hour for every non-billable hour you have. Well, guess what happened to his billable hours? They immediately doubled on that. I thought that was the method was brilliant and how simple it was, but then how effective it was. So an incentive is properly structured, is designed to change behavior. Now, let me give you another example. Years ago, I had a company up in Maine, and the owner was going through a divorce and whatever, and was mentally out of the business. I mean, he just wasn't, it wasn't, and this lasted for about a year and a half. I mean, people that go through some life-changing tragedy like that, it takes them a while to get over it. Fortunately, this company had 4 really good managers, 4 guys who really had the best for the company in mind. They stepped up, they ran the company, and the company that year had its best year ever. Okay, there may be a lesson in here for the owner on this one. He's mentally out of the picture, and they had their best year ever. So there's a lesson there to be learned. But the company was doing about $3 million in sales. Profit was 15% net profit, so $450,000. What the owner did, he said to these 4 guys, he said, listen, I'm going to give you 10% of the net profit. You're going to split it evenly, and there you go. So we took 10%, $45,000 of the profit, split it up evenly, about $11,000 for each of these 4 people. Okay. Now, here's my question. My question is, that was a nice thing for him to do, but did it change behavior? I think, my answer is, I don't think it did. I think, I knew these 4 men, they worked hard. They had the best interests of the company at heart. They were just going to work hard and do the best they could. Now, I think it was a great thing for the owner to do, but it wasn't designed to change behavior on there. And so we have to distinguish between, I'd say, bonuses are a reward for past performance, whereas an incentive is designed to change behavior going forward on here. And I think that's really critical to understand the concept.
Thank you for listening to today's podcast episode. I hope this has helped you find a few pieces of nuggets that you can use in your own business here. And I highly recommend checking out the full 1 hour plus episodes of each of these guests that we've had on the show to see more of what they had to say here. Some of these guests we've been pursuing for quite some time. Tony Bass for at least 3 years now, and we got him on the show, and it was a solid 1 hour and a half episode. And I highly recommend you check out his book. Also, E-Myth for Landscape Contractors, or E-Myth Landscape Contractor Edition. And if you are interested, checking out our software, the How to Hardscape Headquarters software, which will help you budget, estimate job costs, time track, schedule, and so much more, including things that we're doing to help you attract open and positive employees and to retain them, show them a career path in your business, as we talked about at the beginning of the episode there. And before we leave, we want to say thank you to our sponsors.
Cycle CPA. If you're looking for bookkeeping, accounting, CFO services, reach out to Cycle CPA at cyclecpa.com. Let them know How to Hardscape sent you for money off their services there. And Knowledge Tree Consulting, if you're looking for efficiency consultants who have a lot of experience in our industry, check out Knowledge Tree Consulting at knowledgetreeconsulting.com.
And we look forward to meeting with you next week on the How to Hardscape podcast.